All right, friends. Hello. Hi. Thanks for joining us in the sauna. That is the collab. We're very excited about health and wellness. So, we're introducing the heat. Also, I want to introduce my friend Corey. Corey is with RideAmigos. She's a Chief Innovation Officer, which is, I've just learned from Adam, there's apparently 4 different styles of this position. Corey's job is sort of like my favorite of the 4. But I'll let her tell you more about that. The cool thing about Corey is I was working as a bartender in the before COVID times, before I decided to come back to school. And one of the friends that I made as a course of that job was Corey. And Corey used to come into the bar and she would have a beer after she rode her bikes with her friends. And she was always like, knew what she was about. Like she had a plan and a goal and she was headed somewhere. And I was like, you know what? I need more people like that in my life. And so I made her be friends with me. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because I feel like what you guys do here at Collab every day is that you're surrounding yourself with like people who are excited about the things that you're excited about, and you're learning how to collaborate with each other, right? And that's what the rest of your life gets to look like in computer science. And so I want to introduce a new computer science field to you. Chief Innovation.
Computer science field is generous, but
this is generally like something you could do with your degree, right? So because you could know the tech side of things and you could know about the product side of things. So with that, welcome, Corey.
Great, cool. I have 30 minutes, right? I'll aim for 30 minutes. You guys bear with me. I practiced like once, and we'll see how it goes. Okay. So Kim was kind enough to help me with this title, but essentially what I'm going to talk about today a little bit is how to build a new product in an established company. And I'll kind of get into like why and all that kind of stuff. But essentially this is something that I've undertaken for the past 1.5 or 2 years, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster. And I think it's kind of interesting to learn some of the hows and whys and whens about how why you would do this. So when I was putting together this presentation, I was a little bit torn actually on what to lead with from a. My computers may have a meltdown while we're doing that. Pause, please. Hold on 1 minute. I'm not on the Zoom right now.
Oh, you're not on the Zoom.
I'll try again.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, so like when I went to put together this presentation, I was a little torn about direction I wanted to go, and it was comical to kind of go through some of my older stuff because I'm talking to you today about like transitioning from one product to a different product. And so you're going to see a little bit of 2 different brand guidelines throughout this project or throughout the presentation. But I thought it was interesting. And it just kind of like made me chuckle that like this is sort of what this is all about. And it's thinking about how we move from one kind of established product line to new products. So just before I kind of dive into the nitty gritty, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit so that you know, I guess, my qualifications and what I bring to this experience, and also who we are as RideAmigos that I work for. I promise this picture is relevant. So this is me back when I was a grad student. And at this point, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life at all. Not that this is my end all be all career goal. But I spent a lot of time racing bikes. I didn't spend a lot of time in school. I'm gonna be really honest about that. But what ended up happening to me was I got hit by a couple trucks on the roads in Boston. And as a result of that, I was sort of struggling at the time for what I wanted my research direction to be. I was studying kind of an interdisciplinary engineering program, and I didn't have a good thesis topic. And so I walked into the civil engineering department and I said, like, hey, I am really interested in sustainable transportation. I care a lot about the safety of cyclists on the road. I keep getting hit by cars. Do you have any interesting research projects for me to do? And I was really fortunate. An advisor there said to me, like, hey, we've got this project, it's funded by the Federal Highway Administration. And what we're trying to do is use behavioral science and incentives to encourage people not to drive their cars. So I got involved in what is now colloquially known as transportation demand management. The goal being like, we want to manage transportation demand as opposed to increasing the supply of like roadways, for example. And all of this came sort of because of my hobbies. But what I ended up doing was joining a company called RideAmigos. RideAmigos is a software company, but we really fashioned ourselves as UX. We build software products for companies, cities, regions, universities, and end users who are commuters to help users or commuters have a better commute experience and to try to leverage what we know about behavioral science and other kind of nudges and incentives to encourage people to drive less. So this is how I got into working with in the software industry. So all of that to say, I am incredibly unqualified to answer any technical questions that you guys have, but happy to answer any. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, I am not a programmer. I am a sort of like a product manager and as Ken mentioned, head of innovation. And what I do is think kind of about one of our product lines every day. I think about it from basically the nuts and bolts of how it functions, UX, UI, how our users and people interact with it, all the way up to our sales strategy around. So I spend all day long thinking about one of our product lines. Yeah. So just to get in a little bit to what we do as a company and what I was faced with when I joined the organization, we were like a privately held company that had a software platform, so a web-based platform. Some of you guys may have actually used our platform. The state of Oregon runs its commuter challenges through the RideAmigos platform. I know that OSU Cascade uses it a little bit. I know that OSU Proper uses it a little bit. If you have any opinions, please share them with me after the fact, maybe not during the presentation. But anyways, yeah, so we work in a software platform. We work with a ton of state and regional agencies. We also were starting at this point to work with enterprises, and I came in and I actually spent the first couple of years of my time thinking about the product that we were using, so that software platform. I'll step through that a little bit in a minute, but also like our customer success, talking to our customers, understanding what they needed, understanding what they wanted, etc. And when I say software platform, I mean we had a pretty rudimentary app. We were living with like commute tracking and trip planning and challenges and stuff in mostly a web-based way. This was largely based off of our experience working with federal governments who historically wanted this type of thing. And I just kind of threw this up in there so we get a little bit of a sense of what we were kind of dealing with. But what I noticed over time was that like we were missing something. And so like I got to this point where I was like, we really need it. We have a web-based platform. One, no one uses web-based platforms anymore. Everyone wants apps. We'll get to that in a minute. Like we still were a successful software as a service company with 10+ years of experience. So it was really hard to sell. It was really hard to understand why we needed to innovate. And what I started looking at was like, we weren't growing very fast. We are a pretty small company. We're about 25 people. And we were experiencing growth, but marginal growth year over year. We were starting to see a saturated market. What that means is that people are willing to pay less for your products. So every year when we renewed our customers, they wanted to pay us less for the software product that we had. It also means the cost of acquiring new customers is higher. So all of this is like, it's much more painful to both acquire new customers and to renew new customers. And the thing that I actually saw the most was we had this inability to serve a smaller customer segment. And what I mean by that is we could only serve really large organizations. We could only serve state and local governments. We could only serve universities. Margins were too small. Experience was too little, etc. And then we started thinking like there's a potential for emerging and disruptive technologies. So has anyone in here heard of the innovator's dilemma? No. Okay, cool. We'll do a little education on this. So this is what we are sort of starting to experience at RideAmigos. What you see on the top line is what you see with companies that have what we call sustaining technologies. So that means they have a product in the market, It sells, they grow marginally year over year, and they just keep sustaining that product because they don't know to do anything different. And two, like they are growing, so they don't necessarily feel the discomfort. What you see down here is the disruptive technology that space. And so it's not a great technological example, but like this is taxis and Uber and Lyft, right? Taxis are a sustained technology. They maybe started to improve a little bit with like newer technologies like paying with credit cards in the cab, being able to call your taxis, in different ways, or having text messages and stuff like that. But Uber and Lyft came into the market and they completely blew up the taxi business. Other than in New York, where we don't need to talk about the weird regulations in New York. That's a whole transportation nightmare. But essentially, you start to become really at risk of these disruptive technologies if you are a company that only has a sustaining product. And what usually happens here is if you don't realize that you have to innovate as an organization, someone else comes in and disrupts it, right? So from my perspective, we were operating here. Someone was likely to come in here and disrupt us, and we needed to consider creating our own form of disruptive technology. And so thus began this journey. This has been an incredibly painful journey. So bear with me while I get into it a bit. But so you think you need to do it, like come up with a disruptive, innovative idea. One, doesn't just come out of the clear blue. Two, no one wants to do it. Your company is stable. Everyone's getting paid their paychecks. No one wants to invest time and effort into building something new. It's really, really, really hard organizationally to present something and have people do it. And I apologize for the terrible name. This was the pitch deck that I pitched like 2 years ago for the new app that we ended up building. We had no good name. This was like very internal, very like, let's figure out what we're doing next. But I had to go through about 6 months of pitching this internally, and essentially pitching an app-based product that was new and more innovative, was much more turnkey, could serve those smaller markets, that basically solved all those problems that I had laid out on the list of issues. But we get back into this problem, innovator's dilemma. The innovator's dilemma comes back into play in a company that's established, because again, no one wants to move from the sustaining technologies. No one wants to do it. And so you have to also not just have a good idea, not just convince people to have like faith in that good idea and then like maybe go out and do it. You have to figure out how to do it. You cannot involve people on your team from the other product line. Once you do that, you have basically ruined your ability to bring anything new to the market. You're trying to create something completely differentiated. And so you have to separate this out. And so you do something called, well, I guess let me take a step back. Does anyone know what that is? Yeah, self-bomber. Do you know how that was developed and who it was developed by? Just gonna engage. It was not. This is a Lockheed Martin product. Lockheed Martin was one of the 2 most successful providers to the Department of Defense. And what happened was they knew they couldn't build this plane in-house, basically, right? They won a contract for this and they were like, we will never succeed. And so they took an entire team and they put them in a completely different place out in the desert. They were 100% separate, and they came up with this idea and they built this plane. And this project had a code name. The code name was Skunkworks. And nowadays the word Skunkworks is pretty colloquially known to mean a secret or side project that is being done by an organization. So, I mean, it is colloquial, so don't say this is not the technical name, but you sort of have to create a Skunkworks project if you're going to create a new, disruptive, differentiated piece of technology within your own organization. It is really, really difficult. You have to get a ton of buy-in, right? I had to convince my CEO and my CTO and my board of directors that it was worth it. And then I didn't have any resources. So I thought we had success, no resources, right? They were like, great, good idea. We'll create a Skunkworks project. You and this other guy go sit in a room, create this app. I have no app development skills whatsoever. And the other guy was a marketer. So we sat down and we were like, what do we do? Okay, this is great. People are excited about this, but we have 0 resources to do this. So where do you get the resources for a whole new product? Well, your existing product sales have to support you. And what that means is that you can't take your entire development team away. can't put them in another room and have them not work on the product, not do answer support calls, not fix bugs, not do all the other stuff. You basically can't take developers unless you have a pretty robust development team away from your existing product, and you don't really want to do that anyways. You can go out and find investors and funding. This is definitely an option. We did a little bit of this. We didn't do a ton of this because we as a company don't, our philosophy is not to take on a lot of investors. We don't want to dilute our ownership pool. There's a lot of other, we don't even talk about it. It's irrelevant to this conversation, but that's an option. We definitely did a little bit of this. And honestly, one of the things that we did was we got a little bit lucky, and I'll get into that in one sec, but like, I think luck goes into it a little bit too. And we got lucky because these guys came to us and said, hey, it's the middle of the pandemic. We have a carpooling app. We're about to go under. Will you buy us? And this is a team of developers in Austria. We acquired them 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And me and my sales guy, we went over to Austria to visit them, but we got lucky. We did have to raise a little bit of investment funding to pay to acquire them, or we had to raise a little bit of funding. But again, we got super lucky. We didn't have to go out and hire another team, but we found a mission-driven team to bring in and join our team to help us build this app. So that's where how we got what today we call Page Commute. This is our new commuter app. I have it on my phone. I'm happy to show anyone after this what it does and how it looks and all that kind of stuff. But we spent about a year and a half, maybe a year bringing MVP of this to market. And that was about a year ago. So we're starting to kind of see steady growth now, but it was a long process. And it took a lot of, again, like luck, convincing, et cetera, to get to the point where we had a new app in the market space, to get to sellable products, to gain some amount of traction around this. And now to support 3 different products within the company. So I'm going to go back to this. We've now experienced success. Still not quite there yet. What I realized recently, and this is a project I'm kind of continuously working on, and I talk fast, so Kim, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to go about 5 minutes under, is all of that stuff that is about innovating, it doesn't end as soon as you have an MVP out there. We feel like, I think I even felt like, oh, the innovation is the app part. The innovation is the product. Okay, once the product is done, we're done. It doesn't end there. Trying to reinsert a Skunkworks project into a mainstream company operations is really, really challenging. So not only was it hard to exit the mainstream company operations, it's actually really, really hard to bring the new product back into company mainstream operations. Again, we are a small 25-person startup. So I'm bringing something back in and saying to my marketing and sales teams, hey, there's like 2 or 3 of you guys. I need you to not only sell the products that you're selling before, I need you to market and sell a whole new product. And that's challenging. And that's why you actually need to work towards continuous buying. At this point, we have 3 products that we're trying to put into the market, and trying to convince, leadership or sales or marketing what they need to prioritize and spend their time on is a constant struggle. And me and a good friend of the company who's in charge of our other product line have fights about it all the time. That's fine. And then the other thing is differentiation is key. And this actually becomes really difficult as you work within an organization that operates in a single space. Every day someone wants to learn something from the other product or bring something new in from the product that they're selling. And if you don't have a clearly differentiated product, you might as well not have created a new product. So I guess my takeaway for y'all, like from this experience of mine, is like innovating is really hard. Getting buy-in to innovate is really hard. Bringing everything back is really hard. The job is never done. I am right now spending a ton of time, I was just telling Kim, working on business strategy for this whole new product. And it's like the innovator's dilemma and taking something and making something new is a process that is never, ever, ever over. You're always the other guy. Until you can start to turn more profit than your original products. So basically, if you're innovating, the goal is to get to the point where you are the ones that are supporting the organization, in which case then you're the next company that's probably going to get disrupted, or you're the next product that's probably going to get disrupted, and you're going to have to think about it all over again. But yeah, the experience has been really interesting. I've learned a ton. I've learned a lot about app design and business strategy around technology and software as a service, but I don't think I know nearly enough. So this has been kind of a reinvention not only of our organization, but of my career, and I think it's been a really interesting process. With that, I'm gonna pause and I'll leave my face up there for a minute. And yeah, sorry, Kim, I went quick. I talk fast and I'm really sorry. But I'm paying for questions and I can also show and tell if anyone wants that, but yeah, go for it.
I was curious about, you said you were able to get the big, you made people excited about it. That's I think that's a pretty big thing. Curious about some things. I assume that some point of this is the establishing a need for it.
Of course.
And after that, then it's the point that needs to get people excited, but showing this is a good thing. So excitement. What were some of the ways to approach?
That's a good question. Let me think and try to give you a concise answer. One thing about let's say the air quotes, like knowing that you have a need for innovation, it often is felt throughout the company. I guess like, I don't want to say it, it's not like I was sitting there and being like, oh my God, we have to innovate. No one else was thinking like we have to innovate, right? Generally, if your organization, well, we're really small, so we all have pretty good visibility into our revenue streams and what's going on a day-to-day basis and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't the only one that thought we needed it. The thing that I did different, I think, than some of the other members of my organization at the time was convince people that we couldn't innovate on our current product well enough to differentiate away and like disrupt the market. What we were doing was like we had been selling in the regional government space for a long time. We had pivoted to the enterprise space. So enterprise generally means like larger organizations. So like a couple examples of like large clients that we have are like LinkedIn and Netflix, like big companies. And we kept trying to move to smaller organizations. And what was happening was we would churn those folks out. And the market space there was not served by anyone. So none of our competitors were willing to touch a market that was below like 5,000 employees. And there's a lot of companies in the world that have less than 5,000 employees. And we sort of knew why they were churning. And so the rest of the team was like, I think, sort of eyeing this idea that they can continue to make incremental changes to their existing products. But ultimately, it's like, these are completely different use cases. Like the small organizations are completely different than larger organizations. And we fundamentally needed a different product. I basically put together a deck of like a vision. I created like UX and UI and like what an app experience would look like and what kind of outcomes you could expect from that. And I pitched it to our CEO. And like once I had the CEO on board, it was sort of easier to trickle down that. And I think like also nothing that I brought to them was like earth-shatteringly new. It wasn't like I was like, commuting is hard, here's a crystal that will solve it. I was like, here are all the things that we've talked about for years, but we can't implement because our product is like, has been around for 10 years and this person expects us to do this and this person expects us to do this. Like I just basically took all the good ideas and was like, what if we just like ignored all these people and like made the thing? So there was like, I think like enough familiarity with that. But you kind of have to pitch. It's like, you think it's almost like going to an investor, but you're doing it internal. And so creating a deck, painting a picture, like good vision exercise, and having a really like, one, having really strong conviction, and two, having like a really cohesive vision, not like, I think we should do this thing, like making sure that they are very clear on what that could be. It's like, yeah, sorry, that was long-winded, but that's my ethos.
What was the experience like? Maybe being told you can't do that, it's not right now, and speak about it next week. Getting the yes.
I cried a lot. I'm only moderately joking because I would get a lot of fights with our CTO, and I'm a lady, so we cry sometimes. No, I mean, it was like fits and starts, you know, I mean, and we can get into the, like, what was it like to finally have a go, but I think I mentioned in the presentation that like the green light was still kind of like figure it out. And we were given like very minor resources, but I think like, yeah, it was sort of like fits and starts. I mean, I would get someone on board. One of the hardest things about small companies in my experience is like ownership. Our board and our founders still own the vast majority of the organization. So, and one of our founders is our CTO. And that is not, I'm not claiming that that's a good or a bad thing, but in our situation, it made it really difficult because he owns the original product and he feels very, very, very strongly that like it is the answer and we should not change it, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a lot. It was a lot of meetings. It was a lot of like brainstorming. There's some market research. It was going out, talking to some of our clients and asking them, you know, different questions, did some research projects. So just trying to like accumulate as much kind of quantitative data around like, hey, this is a good idea as we possibly could, with a small team, right? We don't have a market research team. We have one marketing person. So like we were very lean in how we did this. And yeah, then the green light was, it was like a yellow, it's like a yellowish green light. It was like, you may do this now, and you may basically like take all of your other like responsibilities and you can throw them away and just go and sit in a room and do this, but like you're doing it. And so like I like studied data architecture and I tried to like write all the like weird algorithms that we use for our logic, and I got us to enough of a place that like a for-hire developer basically could like do some of the work and we could get MVP out. And we had an MVP out when we acquired the company in Austria. So we were at that point, but it was not a good, I mean, it wasn't very bad, like, yeah, like many MVPs are. So yeah, I mean, just like constant kind of learning experience, like a lot of online courses. So yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. It did create some issues, not so much with the existing, it ended up creating issues for us as an organization because we were worried that it was going to create issues for the existing developers to such an extent that we actually took on another project on the other arm of the company. And as a result, now we have taken multiple risks without allowing the risks that we are, or without trying to put enough eggs in the basket of any of the risks that we're taking to pay off. And we're still fine. It's not to say like we are like floundering or anything, but like I think it hasn't allowed us to maybe put as much effort behind either of our new endeavors as we would have wanted to. So essentially, like we created a problem for ourselves by trying to avoid that problem. Yeah, that was not my decision. That was not my decision, but that is what happened. Mm-hmm. If I were to do this again, it's a hard question. And the reason it's a hard question is because we're very resource constrained, being a 25% company. If I were to do this again and we were a slightly larger, slightly more resources, whatever, I would make sure we had a full vertical stack of people. And so a vertical in like the software product world would be like sales and marketing, success of products, like it's basically everything that would go into creating and getting the product out the door in the Skunkworks project. I basically had me and a team of developers. And the reason I say that is because ultimately what happened was like we got the thing and then like the expectation seemed like, oh, the app is there and it's just going to like, we're going to put it in the app store and all of a sudden it'll be like, it's going to solve all the problems. At the end of the day, like not having those people bought in on the product from the beginning, it's been hard, and trying to get them to prioritize or not prioritize the efforts is hard. And the products themselves, because they're so differentiated, sell and market differently. And so that's a challenge. So I would like in a perfect world, it doesn't even have to be a big team, but have a sales and marketing person at minimum, a success person, like basically create a vertical that's not touching the other product anymore also.
Two questions, one short, you have a direct to consumer?
Not at the moment. This app will likely be direct to consumer by the end of the summer. And that is part of the current like strategy pivot around the business side of this. The reason that we didn't go that route from the very beginning is it's incredibly hard to introduce a direct to consumer product without venture or without funding. Because you need to make revenue. And so like a subscription model will get you enough revenue to float you for a while. And that was sort of the decision that we had originally. I don't want to say pivoting, but we are working diligently to create a direct consumer now, where there's still like a business to business sales model as well for a premium subscription.
And then I'm just curious how people who use this, how you see a lot of lots of adoption, or say,
I would say we see like we see pretty good adoption or pretty close to what we would have anticipated. With a product like this, one, because it touches a thing that's like a pretty deeply ingrained habit, which is like I drive to work or I do this thing. You just don't like it. I don't expect 75% of the company's like staff to use it. And then I think honestly, it's company by company to a certain extent. It really a little bit gets at the company ethos. Like we work with companies like Patagonia and like bike component manufacturers and companies like that. And there are people really excited because they love to bike to work and they love to walk to work and they want to like do a thing and participate and like play a game and all that kind of stuff. We now have a few companies that are like factory workers, like shift workers or like hard goods. And those folks are a little tougher. One, they're a little less tech savvy. And so actually onboarding those people and introducing challenges. And then because of their shift work nature, like their shift work and different things, it's harder for them to consider doing an alternative. Or they're more reticent. But I will say acquisition in this industry is like a really challenging topic. And it's something that we think about pretty much every day. And different ways that we can acquire users better.
I guess I'm kind of curious. They started kind of as a study project, say, and like isolated team, like, disruptive technologies. Is there a stage in which you sort of
It's a really good, I mean, it's a good question that I don't think is a really clean answer. I think that likely in an ideal world, which is sort of what I was getting at, my responsibility is like, in an ideal world, you have the full vertical in the Skunkworks project. And so you'd be able to create a go-to-market strategy and go-to-market before pulling it back into the, basically like as a sub, like, I don't say sub company, you're not going to spin it off, but like, there are options when you introduce a product like this. You could spin it off to its like a new company, particularly if you want to venture raise on it. So like if you have something that's disruptive and it's a new idea and it's interesting enough, you can go raise capital on that. And a lot of times you can raise more capital on that than you could on the existing company. And so like if you keep it separate as long as you can make some of those decisions. Unfortunately, like in a company of our size, like we have such a small sales and marketing team that the moment we got to go to market time, we had to reintegrate. We still have two separate development teams. And part of the reason for that is we have different tech stacks on all of our products. And so we definitely have some developers that could work on both or go across, but like we have developed this app in completely different technology than our original products. And so those two folks set separately. And the other thing is like they're geographically co-located. So the Australians sit together. They really like that approach. The American team is dispersed. And so like if we ever hire anyone to work on this product, we hire them in Austria for the most part, just because of that goal. So I think the longer the better, basically. Like if you can go to market without pulling it back in. And then if you're gonna not spin that out into another like company or raise on it, I think you likely pull it back in once you have a good sense of which product is going to dominate like your sales funnel. And the reason for that is like it's really hard to prioritize if you're not clear yet on what's going to bring in the most revenue. If you can get clear on what product is gonna bring in the most revenue, then your sales team is gonna primarily work on that. And your marketing team is gonna primarily work on that. You're gonna support other products. Either you're gonna sunset them because you have some people using them, you're gonna try to convert other people, or you're gonna try to think through what that looks like.
Are there parts of the business that can collaborate? Other bodies like direct consumer is awesome, but like to me, it's probably pretty difficult to set up. It's like private. So like, are there any thoughts in maybe leveraging some of the
I mean, yes, we work together every day. So our leadership team within the organization is cross platform. So any decisions that we're making about like pretty high level strategy are being made across products. And even our development teams, they collaborate. They have like a weekly collab just to talk about like anything that like this team has learned, or anything like even just like the most basic things. And our DevOps team is shared. So yes, and we are currently working on a government strategy also for this. That is, it looks direct to consumer, but there's government involvement basically. So regions tend to spend a lot of money to try to reduce congestion on corridors or other things that are like major transportation issues. And that's a great way for us to work in the region and have buy-in from an agency and potentially funding for incentives and rewards and stuff to get people to different. So yeah, I think direct to consumer is really difficult because at the end of the day, like commuting is a really hard problem and people mostly don't want to change how they do it. And so like finding a way to allow them to earn rewards or do other things is critical. And if you do that, you find providers, and it is an ecosystem. It's not like just make an app and put it in something else. Absolutely.
Any other questions or?
Great. Thank you for your questions. I appreciate them. They're very good.